you need to manually update, so just be aware that's coming next week. How about, do we have anything with seniors happening? No, other than we're getting older and better, right? That's it. Okay, wait for the weather to warm up. In the animated Bible and stuff, but they weren't there. In the animated Bible and stuff, but they weren't there for kids. It wasn't like they wrote the Bible and they just put some things in for people to be able to like have a break for their kids. Everything that's in there has a reason. So I'm going back on some of those, and we're looking at, okay, how do you make that work for, what's the message that's in there for adults? So this is kind of what we think of when we think of Daniel in the lion's den, and we're going to take a look at what it really is. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And you guys know I like to always shape it up that we know what the historical thing is going on. So it's 700 BC, and Daniel in the lion's den is happening about a little more than 500 years before Christ, okay? So it's 700 BC. We talked about that the Assyrians were kind of the main power, okay? And Babylon was down here. Babylon took over that bottom part. But look at the Medes over here, and the Persians were just out that side. Now, if you go to the next slide, please. So this is 100 years later. We have the Babylonians in there, so you can see they took over. In 100 years, the Assyrians were gone. Okay, and the Assyrians were the superpower of their day in that part of the world. So if you think about that, our country's 250 years old. The Assyrians were gone in less than 100 years. Basically, in a lifetime and a half, okay, something of that nature. But look what happened here. Look how the Medes have expanded. They've pushed in. They've also taken some more of Elam down here. And the Persians are kind of the light green, so they're starting to show up. Okay, next slide. Now, this is the time we're going to be talking about. This is the Medo-Persian. The Medo and Persians blended together, okay, and they became this. And if you look at what they conquered, they wound up with all of it, okay, and they're way over here. And just to give you an idea of what that is in today, if we can look at the next slide. Okay, this is today. And if you look at today, where they had up into Turkey, they went into Bulgaria, Romania, they had Greece, they had Cyprus, they came all the way over here to Iran. That's the main area where they were based. But they went all the way up here into Uzbekistan and Turkestan. They went all the way over to India, and that's China. So they had from India and China basically all the way over into Romania and stuff, okay? So that's where you're getting into almost, that's Eastern Europe, okay? Then they had this. They did not take, nobody really wanted Saudi Arabia, particularly the top part, because that's just all desert. There's not a lot of water. But they did come along and they took areas along the water. They went over and took Egypt along the Nile, and they went over here into Libya so they could have the Mediterranean Sea. So the Medo-Persians were a growing force and becoming the world's dominant power in the day. And when you go back, almost all of those come down to the fact of they came up with some new technology, better swords, better catapults, cannons, not cannons at that time, but you know what I mean, further on as you go forward in time. Whoever had the best military tended to conquer people that had less. But then you say, so why is this battle? Why are all these things changing? If you look where they were, they wanted water and they wanted places where you could grow food. That's what they were after, that you could graze cattle and everything. So that's kind of what's going on at this time. Okay, the Medo-Persians are starting to take over, and it's the early part where the Medes are the main ones. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, please. It's interesting too, isn't it, that as of this week, we're still fighting for that same land? Isn't that kind of crazy? Okay. So we're going to read Daniel in the lion's den, and we're going to talk about it. Okay, what it means. So I've got it here, and this is from the English Standard Version, which is considered the most what's the right word that I want? It's the best translation to the old words. So it doesn't read as smooth as some of the other translations, but it's considered the most accurate. There's the word. So, and we're talking about this, so it pleased Darius the Mede, okay? And I put down here, if you look, different from the latter Dariuses. There was a Darius the first and Darius the second that we read about later. And when I was first looking at this, I go, wait a minute, who's Darius and what is that? Darius can be a title as well as a name. They aren't quite sure. So it can kind of mean like king. Sometimes it says Darius the king, or it specifically says Darius the first. This is Darius the Mede, just so you know when you're reading. He wanted to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials. So 120 people who are running the government and 3 vice presidents that are going to watch out, okay? So the administrators, of whom Daniel was one. So Daniel was one of the 3. To whom of these satraps should give account so the king might suffer no loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps because of an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Okay, so do we remember who Daniel was? Okay, Daniel was a young man when the Babylonians came in and took Judah. Okay, and what they did when they conquered land is they took people and they moved them into the other parts of the kingdom so that it would disperse the people that were there. Then they'd take people from other parts of the kingdom and move them into the area they'd conquered. So it was a way of mixing people, and it took away your identity as a people. Okay, it took away who you were, what you belonged, what your religions were. It intermarried people, and the idea was it would become more of one kingdom. Well, as you can see from the map, okay, from the first map I showed to the 700s to the 500s, in 200 years, 3 different sets of rulers came in and people and mixed that all up. So that's part of, we think of the Jews being dispersed. That was part of the Jews being dispersed. Some people consider that a tragedy. Other people will look at it and say that was God's way of getting them all out and mixing them through all the nations. Okay, and the word for that, I learned this week, is a diaspora. Okay, a diaspora is either because there are things that are so bad in your country that you voluntarily leave as a people, you disperse, or somebody comes in and forcefully makes you disperse. So you're smarter today because you know what that word means, okay? All right, so, and the other thing, so I want to tell you a little more about Daniel and I. So Daniel was a peer of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. They all were all young people that when the Assyrians and the Babylonians were conquering Judah and stuff, okay, and going through that period, they took people and they took them out and mixed them. The Babylonians in particular did it to these 4 boys. Okay, they were young men who were considered the top in their group, okay, and they were taken and they were forced to go to the capital of the conquering country, and they had to be educated for 3 years. They had to learn the language, they had to read the books, the key books of that culture, okay, and become more educated, and then they had to prove themselves physically. They could have no handicaps physically, mentally, anything else. They were take the best of the best. And they came from rich families or political families of the people they conquered. So they wanted to take the best of the best and move them into their society, okay, the conquering society. The other thing was they could blackmail the powerful people and the ex-politicians because they had their kids. So if somebody took your kid, wouldn't you do what they told you to do? Okay, so all that's going on, and they excelled. They were judged back by the Babylonians when that was Nebuchadnezzar to be 10 times better than their peers. Okay, little side note, they were feeding them. The king says, hey, these are important people, feed them what I eat off my table. And they went to the king and said, to the man that was over them, and said, please, can you let us not eat that junk? Can we eat good food. We want to eat vegetables and clean water. And he said, I can't, because if you don't keep performing to the top of your performance level, the king will kill me. And they said, give us 10 days, they said, and test us every day and see if we are not better from eating healthy food as opposed to what the king had. I don't know what the king ate. I have no idea, okay? But they didn't want it. And so 10 days, they got tested every day. At the end of it, they were so much better performance and look and ability that the guy who was managing them said, yes, you can keep eating your healthy diet. So, total side note, I'll tie this back in together. We say, hey, does the Bible address everything? Yes. Over 700, or no, that'd be like what? Yeah, 600 years ago, roughly, God was telling you don't eat junk food. Don't drink sodas. Don't drink all kinds of junk. He was saying eat healthy food. Interesting, right? Because we say, well, the Bible doesn't address everything. It does. They didn't say, hey, can we go eat donuts and Chick-fil-A? Okay, and I love Chick-fil-A, so I'm not knocking that. I actually love donuts too, but anyway, okay? But that's not God's diet. God's diet is to be a vegetarian and drink pure water, eat and drink clean. Okay, now we're going to tie that in to Daniel in the lion's den. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. Then the high officials and the satraps sought to find a grounds for complaint against Daniel with regards to the kingdom, but they could find no grounds of complaint or any fault because he was faithful and no error or fault was found in him. Okay? Can people say that about you? Are you that ethical and right and upright that people say that about you? Not saying you're perfect. Jesus was the only perfect man. But are you upright in what you do? Do people say, yeah, he's different, she's different? Okay. Then it says, these men said, we shall not find any grounds for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of God. Kind of interesting. The only place they thought they could trick him was that. So I ask you this, if you were put on trial today for being a Christian, would you be convicted? Is there enough evidence against you that you would be found guilty of being a Christian? If not, think about it, okay? Next one, please. Then these high officials and satraps came to an agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. So what did they do? Remember when they wanted to throw the young guys in the fire, they went and said, oh, king, you're so great. Okay, so anytime somebody comes and starts buttering you up, your antenna should go up. And you should say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Okay, so they come to him right away and say, oh, Darius, live forever. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and governors have agreed. Have they? Daniel wasn't there. Okay, we know that all the three guys, okay, that got thrown in the fire were also officials. They weren't there. Okay, so again, a lie. Okay, and they did that again when they were throwing the boys in the fire. Everybody says that this is what we should do. So when you hear that again, your antenna should go up. Okay, and we have agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes a petition to any god or man cannot make a petition to any other god or man for 30 days except you, O king. They shall be cast into the lion's den. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so they cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, Darius signed the document and injunction. Excuse me, in the day, if the king made an injunction, not just talking, but if he said, thus saith the king type of thing, it was law, and it couldn't be backed up, and it went from generations back. So they tricked him into saying that, and why they say it, you'll read about it over and over and over again, that they refer back to that. It's because the king couldn't veto it. Okay? Next one, please. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, He went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. So he knew he would get in trouble. And he still said, I'm going to do what God said. Okay? I'm not saying you need to be a flaming radical where you're at work, but if somebody asks you to do something that you can't do, they need to respect you too. Okay? I was asked at a past job to falsify an expense account to cover for my boss that was having an affair with his boss's secretary. And he was married and had a couple of kids. And he asked me to falsify it, and I said, I can't do that. He said, well, I'll cover for you. I'll sign for it. I said, I can't do it. If that ever comes back on me, it hurts my reputation. And that's too important for me. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying I can't do that. He says, I'll fire you if you don't do it because now you know about it. I said, I'm just telling you I can't do it. And he fired me. Okay, I was one of his top performers. We had a couple little babies at home. We had a house with payments. We had cars with payments. And guess what? I wasn't going to compromise, okay? It would have been easier to say, yeah, boss, I'll do that as long as you cover for me. That was a red line for me that I couldn't pass, okay? And I'm not saying I'm so great, but you're going to run into things like that in your life. And you understand that's not God punishing you. That's God forging you, making you stronger than you would be if you didn't go through it. And if he can forge you into a strong sword, he can use you, okay, out in the world, okay? And he prayed and gave thanks to his God as he had previously done. Next slide, please. And these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and pleas before God. So you get that, right? That means they all kind of just accidentally showed up at his house and said, oh, look at this heathen. Look what he's doing against. They set it all up, okay? It was a total trap in making plea before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning this injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petitions to any god or man within 30 days except to you, O king, shall be cast into the lion's den? The king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles of Judah. Okay? Daniel's like 80 years old now, and he was brought when he was 16 to 18 years old. Okay, so he's been at least 60 years in this area. But they still identify him by pointing at him. This guy from Judah, this foreigner that you brought in, okay? He's doing it. Pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunctions you have signed, but makes his petitions to his God 3 times a day. Next slide, please. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored until the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said, so they came back again, okay, accusing him, all right? When the king, they know the king doesn't want this to happen, they come back and say, these men came back by agreement to the king and said to the king, know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance of the king established can be changed. So they're blackmailing the king into throwing him in the lion's den. It wasn't like that the king wanted to do it. It says the king was distressed. Okay, that's how much he liked him. Next slide, please. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the lion's den. The king declared to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. A stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and the signet of the Lord's, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and fled from him. So they put a stone, they put him in something. okay, where the lion's den is. I always picture the lion's den more like a big well or a small coliseum, you know, where the lions were in there and it was big and open and they threw them over the wall. That's not what it says. It says that there was an opening that they could roll a stone in front of to block the lions and people from getting in or somebody helping him get out. Okay, can you think any place else in the Word where a stone was rolled away? Okay, stone was rolled away for a guy from Judah. And we sing a song about Jesus called the Lion of Judah. Okay, this is Old Testament. I'm seeing Jesus all through it. There's more to come. Okay. And the king. So the king was distressed, and then he also, this is a pagan king, was distressed, and now he's fasting to try to figure out how to help this guy that is one of his key advisors. Next slide, please. So this I have and this is just art. This is somebody's art, okay? But if you look at the lions and stuff, so there's pictures of Daniel as a young man, and there's pictures of him as an old man. So knowing he was 80 years old, I had to go pick pictures where he looked like he was 80. But you see the hole up top? So they think more that there was a cave or something down below. And these lions were kept in there, and they threw people in, and that's why they could put a stone across the top. And then they poured hot wax, and they had rings that had their initials and stuff in it, and they would put the ring into the wax, and that way they could tell whether anybody had taken somebody out or moved the stone. Any place else in the Bible where they do that? Okay, when they put Jesus in the tomb, they didn't want the Jews to steal him, so they sealed it with wax and put their seals, their signet rings, into that. Again, more New Testament. Next slide, please. Then at break of day, the king rose, okay, the break of day. So he didn't sleep in, didn't have breakfast. As soon as it was day, he ran out there. The king rose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions?" So do you understand what the king's saying? He's been in anguish. He fasts for him. He comes at the break of day and he cries out, "O Daniel, servant of the living God." Do people know that your God's alive? A lot of people say, "Hey, Jesus was killed all those years ago, and 2,000 years ago. Why are you hanging on to that?" Okay, my God's alive. Let me tell you about my God. Let me show you what he does in my life. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is another example of, the hole up top and the lions down below, and how they used to feed the lions is they'd throw people and meat in. So the lions were used to eating all that. Okay, next. Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him and also before you, O king. I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Okay? So what happened in the fire? Who was in there? They threw 3 guys in. They saw 4. Who was it? It's an angel that looks like the Son of God. Okay? Who was this? It says an angel. Okay? Was that a pre-incarnation of Jesus? Was Jesus there? Was it an angel? Okay? Do we have angels in our lives? I would tell you that we do. Do we see them? Word says we have entertained angels and not known who they were. Okay? Next one, please. Okay? So here he is again around. I have no doubt that these were hungry, man-eating lions. That's who they were. It wasn't that they were just full or something. They knew that what got thrown down the hole, they got to eat. Okay, next one, please. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. So the lions were obviously hungry. Okay? Now, can I go back to something I said before? Remember how they ate vegetables and drank water? Okay? Did they smell different? Did they not smell of meat like the people who ate meat and had it on their hands because they didn't wash their hands and stuff very much? Okay? Was God working even 60 years before to help Daniel be prepared for this? Okay, his angel, you could have pork chops in your pocket, and if an angel came, men cower. When you read about angels, men cower and they fall on their face. The lions would too, okay? But is that part of his plan? So sometimes things that happen to us now, we say, why am I going through this trial? God says, just wait, my child. You have no idea. I am taking care of you. Yeah, but I don't understand it. I'm taking care of you now. You will at the right time. Okay, let's go to the next one. Then King Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, or his part of the kingdom, right? Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. And he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his domain shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reigns of Darius the Mede and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. First of all, we may see Darius in heaven. This is a guy, this was pre-Jesus, and he's proclaiming who God is. Can you make a statement like that? Do you tell your friends that that's who your God is? Darius, the pagan god, is saying that. Okay, we may see him in heaven. Okay, he'll have to come the hard way, like the Jews that died in the Old Testament, okay? But we've got that, okay? And then it says, so Daniel was 80 years old. They think he was retired before Darius the Mede came in and decided to set up this whole little political setup that he had. So he was called out of retirement. Okay, when I'm 80, I hope I'm retired and I only have to do volunteer work with the church. That's it. Okay, I'll go to the men's thing and eat. That's my volunteer. Okay, but anyway, so he was called out of retirement. He's put into service. The king wants to make him the head guy. After this, I believe he is the head guy, the head administrator. Okay. And Daniel prospered under the rest of the reign of Darius the Mede, okay, and then they change, the Persians come in, and Cyrus takes over, and he's still used there. So we don't know how old he is. This is kind of the last mention of him, okay, but he had a prosperous life because he followed God. And through 3 different kingdom empires, the Babylonians, the Medes, and the Persians, which becomes the Medo-Persian Empire, that's what they called it. He's a leader because he's following God. So if you're having some hard times where you're at, do you understand if we follow God, God's going to make it right? You may not be Daniel, okay? If you're a missionary where you work, if you're a missionary at your retirement home, if you're a missionary at the grocery store, God can use you. Okay, and you need to be there. And I think I have one more slide, I think is in there. Okay, so I like this one because the lions and him are looking up. Okay, the Lord will fight for you. You need to only be still. That's actually in 2 places in the Bible. Okay, the battle belongs to the Lord. And so what I want to share is, how much time do we waste worrying about things from the past, okay? And so far in the past that even the memories are in black and white, okay? Color hadn't even been discovered then, Okay, and we're worried about what somebody said to us in the 3rd grade. Okay, it's gone. Let it go. It's taking up like, hard drive space, RAM space on your computer. Let that go. You can't change what the past is. That's worry that accomplishes nothing. Okay, what it was, use it and go forward. The other thing is we worry so much about things that will never happen. We're worrying about things in the future that we have no business wasting our time. And do you realize the evil one wins when he can have you thinking about things in the past you can't change or things in the future you don't have to face? You've wasted that time, and we all have limited time. My time is less than some of the young people's, okay? But I have only so many hours and days left in my life, and I hope God gives me a long, profitable life, okay? But my days are counting down. And so if he can keep me thinking even for an hour about something worthless, that's an hour that I didn't spend doing something for God. And when I go and stand before him, I want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. Okay? So we want to do that. The other thing I want to say is, so they had to throw people down into the lion's den. Is there one more slide or not? Okay, yeah, go to that one. Let's see, because that one had a good one too. Okay, battle belongs to the Lord. Hail, hail, Lion of Judah. Okay. I don't know if that was Daniel or, communing with a version of Jesus. Okay, the Lion of Judah. I don't know if that's an angel talking to the lion. I can't talk to lions. Maybe angels can. Maybe they can do telepathy. I don't know. Because God says, my ways are not your ways. My ways are so high above your ways, you don't even comprehend them. So I can talk to my dog, who is loyal as can be, and he's a smart dog. And if I tell him about trigonometry and calculus, he's going like, you got a bone? Okay. He doesn't get it. It doesn't mean it's not true. It means he doesn't get it. God has things like that for us. He says, I accomplish things you can't even imagine. Okay? So we go, how would that happen? Even when you're worrying, well, if I do this, I do that, and I talked her into doing that, and maybe if I could get the police officer to say this or go to the court with this, and he goes, I got it. I got it. You go, yeah, but and you're thinking, you're laying awake at night at 2 in the morning going, well, if I do this, and if my ex-husband hadn't done this, and my car didn't break, and he's going, relax. Go to sleep. I got this for you. Okay? And when you look at the hole coming down, we think in this story about them throwing him in or lowering him down. How many of us have climbed into the lion's den of our own on our own recognizance? We've gone down there because we're worried. We don't think we're worth it. I deserve to be down here. God says, no, you don't. You're my masterpiece. He could say, you look at that lion. If you've ever seen a lion or a tiger live, they're phenomenal beings. I mean, it just blows you away. Okay, and that's just one thing, okay? How about the angels? Yet in the word it says he calls us his masterpiece. Not the angels, okay? Not lions, not elephants, okay? Us, dolphins, whales. Oh my goodness, He says we're his masterpiece. Don't climb down into the lion's pit on your own. And if you find yourself down there, climb out. Okay, and if you need help, you call people who can help you. Who can help you? Those people are in this room. Look around. Okay? Mary Lou and I laugh when we say our kind of qualification for like who is a good friend. If your car broke down out in Grants at 2 o'clock in the morning during a snowstorm, who would get out of bed and come help you? Okay? Those are friends. Not when somebody, I'm like my niece says, I have 600 friends. I said, Amanda, how many of those people would come get you in the middle of the night in a rainstorm? And she goes, almost all of them, I bet. And we were around for a weekend. It was like Thanksgiving or Easter. And every time I'd walk past her, she'd say a lower number. She'd go, at least 300, at least half of them. And we'd walk by a little bit later, and she goes, okay, maybe only 100. And I wasn't saying anything. We were just walking. At the end, fast forward, at the end of the week, she said, maybe 3. Okay, those are your friends. Those are people here, okay, that if I couldn't come for some reason, I could call people and we could find somebody, okay? So these are the people in this room, okay, and other friends that you have that are the people you need to help get you out of your lion's den when you find yourself there by accident or on purpose, okay? And we're going to do communion, but I want to close this part in prayer. So, Father God, I just thank you for your words. I thank you that even in the Old Testament, we see Jesus and salvation all through it. We see men of integrity, and we aren't perfect, but we have Jesus who stands up and says, hey, God, he's with me, that he takes care of us. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for these stories, that they're good enough for kids, yet they're deep enough for even scholars. We thank you for your time together today, and we pray everybody goes home better equipped to make it through their week and the rest of this new month. In Jesus' sweet name, amen. Okay, Mary Lou's going to come up and do communion here. Okay.